Prepare to set fire to the index card of allowable opinion. Your daily dose of liberty education starts here. The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. Delighted to welcome you to episode 2482 of The Tom Woods Show with our friend Raphael Lima, who is my man down in Brazil, keeps an eye on things, and lets me know what's going on. That's what's going to happen in this episode, because I think in a way the story coming out of Brazil, it could very well be a warning to the U.S. Like, we're not quite there yet, but it's no longer completely implausible that one day we could be in a situation not unlike what's unfolding in Brazil. So first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for being here again. Really proud. I'll promise I'll try and talk slower this time. The last one, I was just blitzing through things.
But the thing is, there's so much to say. I completely understand. And let me just make clear, in case there's anybody who is unaware, let me contextualize this episode by saying that Brazil is on the radar of a lot of non-Brazilians right now because of what's been going on between Brazil and Twitter, or X. And
you don't like X?
No, it's a dumb name. Come on. But it doesn't matter. We have another episode on that. But there's been an effort to restrict communication via Twitter, and there's been Elon. Well, you can talk about what the trouble that Elon Musk is getting into in Brazil because he refuses to comply with various demands coming from the court. But in order to get to 2024 and the censorship that is being threatened with regard to Twitter, we have to start the story a little bit before that, because it's like with anything. I can't just start the history of the Middle East on October 7th, 2023. How did we get to this point? So let's talk about. Let's begin, if we can, with so-called Operation Car Wash from some years ago. What's that all about? And then, of course, we have to talk about the leadership over there. I mean, you got some real winners over there, just like us.
But Brazil is, one of our national sports is explaining Brazil to foreigners. It's always so fun to explain things and just watch your face go, what? He nominated his personal lawyer to the Supreme Court? Yeah, twice. And then just watching you guys reply to that is just awesome. So what's happening right now is that the Supreme Court, in effect, became the de facto censorship branch of the government in Brazil, and the social media regulator by powers invested on themselves, by themselves, illegally. And now we are in a position where you're afraid to criticize the Supreme Court or what you can say or about what or about whom, because you can be censored, deleted from the internet, your assets can be seized, you can be arrested, you can be just deleted from the existence of the internet because some judge thought that what you said was anti-democratic somehow. All right. So how does this start? And a lot of Brazilians forgot about this or don't know this because it's a really long story, but it starts with Operation Car Wash, which I think got a few headlines in the US. It's almost 10 years old at this point, and it was the largest anti-corruption operation in the history of Brazil and probably worldwide, because what was uncovered is that the Lula government, the Workers' Party, was doing, well, it was his successor, Dilma's government, but it started with him, was in bed with a lot of different companies, state companies, private companies, diverting billions of reais, which is a few $billion, from state treasury and state-owned companies towards buying support in the legislative branch, towards electing their friends, towards electing their friends in other countries. Car Wash reached other countries. There are presidents of other countries which are in jail right now because of it, because that was uncovered. It was huge. It took down the left wing in Brazil. It took down a lot of other parties. And as it grew in opposition as well, because when it was just targeting the Workers' Party, a lot of parties were in favor of the operation. And then it gets to a new party and a new party and a new party, and it starts to get more and more opposition because now it's not just your enemy, right? And in 2019, Lula he had lost the election. Bolsonaro was president, and Operation Car Wash reached the Supreme Court. There were many people arrested previously, and they were saying what they were doing, who they were paying, what was happening. And one of them said, well, there was one Supreme Court judge who was on the scheme. And a news piece came out on the magazine Crusoe, from Robinson Crusoe, exposing that, saying, well, this is what the guy said. I mean, we still don't have evidence. The evidence will come out. The investigation needs to happen. But how do we investigate the Supreme Court? How does that happen? Right? And the named judge, Dias Toffoli, who was a lawyer of Lula, a campaign lawyer of him, and was nominated for that. He had pretty much no competence whatsoever to be a judge ever, and was nominated straight up to the Supreme Court. He was nominated as being in the scandal, and he started an inquiry from the Supreme Court and gave the Supreme Court powers of prosecution, I think, investigation, and judging attacks on the honor of the Supreme Court and its members. Now, those powers are illegal. They're the victim, they're the investigator, they're DA, they're the judge. What the hell? Right? But they gave themselves that power completely illegally, ordered that piece of news censored. It was taken down. It was illegal. It was ordered to be taken down. And then that judge, Dias Toffoli, named Alexandre de Moraes, who's the famous bald guy now that runs the investigation, and named him to run the whole investigation, which was originally against attacks on the honor of the court, namely saying that they were corrupt. And that investigation, that inquiry, became known as the Doomsday Inquiry, because it's now about everything. Whatever he wants to be there is there. It became about defending democracy and against fascism and safeguarding the elections and saving the environment and the whales. Everything is in there. If he gets offended somehow, you're now there. And Elon Musk is now there because he refused to comply. And what happened over the years was a series of illegal orders, censor, to take down, to everything. And what happened, fast forwarding a lot, is that Elon Musk said, well, we're done with receiving those orders. This is illegal. It's not that he's defying the court or not complying with orders. He's saying, but you're not legally obligated to follow illegal orders. What you're doing is illegal. I'll not follow it anymore. And the judge replied by putting him in the inquiry and threatening to arrest Twitter employees and take down Twitter in Brazil and that stuff. And that's how we're here. But I'll put it back to you for questions.
What's public opinion? How's public opinion reacting to all this?
Right. It depends largely on what your political position is. So
what a surprise.
Imagine the Supreme Court starts to investigate by decree Donald Trump. Well, every Democrat is in favor, every conservative is against it, and all the people in the middle are like, I don't know. That's what's happening. Center and right wings are against it because it's an attack on the freedom of speech. It's a flagrant abuse of power by the Supreme Court. They're now in bed with the government doing that because Lula came back to power because of the Supreme Court. We'll get to that. They arrested him, pretty much. They nullified the whole operation. So if you're right-wing or really center, you're against it. And if you're left-wing, either you think that car wash didn't even exist, there was no corruption, there's just some conspiracy with the CIA and the US to transform Brazil into an imperialist colony of the US. It's just a lie. Or you say, yeah, they're doing illegal stuff, but, we got to safeguard democracy and we got to beat fascism, and Bolsonaro is literally Hitler. So, we might as well break a few rules, That's general opinion on that. But people very strongly hate the Supreme Court, even people who hate the right wing. So, and it's turning. Like a lot of people don't follow this, or they just got bored a long time and they just didn't follow. But now that it's getting more public, people are getting to the nitty-gritty, the details, and they're seeing how abusive this is. So it's getting far worse for the Supreme Court at this point.
Okay, so now let's bring the story up a little bit closer to the present.
Right. So this inquiry begins, and Bolsonaro was president. And he wasn't supposed to be president. And the system hated him. So he was like the wrong guy won, like democracy failed. It's like when Trump got elected or when Brexit happened. It's like,
the parallels are just eerie.
Yeah, it's just like, people voted wrong. We have to, save democracy against voters,
Yeah.
So Congress started opposing him, and the Supreme Court started opposing him. The left obviously opposed him. And this became the Supreme Court they sort of in their heads probably thought that they were monarchs. Like where you have a constitutional monarchy, and the monarch has the power of, if things get too ugly, he can step in and say, look, calm down. You're destituted. Let's try again. They probably thought that they were going to be that, right? And they started to turn the Supreme Court into essentially the legislative that they wanted to have, because the legislative became a lot more right-wing due to the corruption operations, that type of thing. And the right-wing grew a lot in Brazil over the last years. And so they started to legislate by decree, saying, well, Congress isn't discussing this matter. This matter is urgent. It's very important. There should be a law on this. They're not doing it. Therefore, we, the Supreme Court, will make up a judgment or something and just decree that the law is whatever we think it is, because we think that's what should be done. And if Congress is not doing that they're failing the Constitution, and then we're going to do it. And if the president's not doing it, we're going to do it. So they started to really abuse their powers. And when COVID came around and the lockdowns and everything, that just ramped up to 11. And the right wing, Bolsonaro, started pushing back. And let's be fair here. A lot of people in the right wing, not a lot, but there are elements in the right wing who are not democratic. They want a dictatorship. They think it's good. There are a lot of left wings who think that as well. Right? So they're not all saints. And they were not saying all libertarian things. Okay? All right. There were people there with bad ideas, but they have the right to express those ideas. They have the right to criticize. What the Supreme Court understood was those opinions, they're an attack on democracy. They're denying science. They're killing people, and therefore we must censor them. They didn't call it censor, but we must protect people from certain opinions because, free speech has to have limits, and we have to regulate that. And so they started to take down posts. They started to take down accounts. They started to raid people. There were police raids on people because, you had a group where someone said that you were arming up a coup and we're just going to raid the people, like police raids into the people. We're going to freeze your assets. People were arrested. That had to do with COVID. That had to do with vaccines. That had to do with a lot of stuff. And that also had to do with the electoral system in Brazil. That's one of the main points there. Throughout 2021 and 22, there was a movement on the right wing who wanted a different electoral system, a different voting system. Because in Brazil, we vote in electronic machines. Like, there's no paper. So there is no recount. You don't know. If the operating system of the machine is corrupted somehow or the counting is wrong somehow, you don't know. You just
but now we have the same argument going on in the U.S., and you're considered to be some kind of lunatic if you say that. Is the same thing there?
Yeah, in Brazil, if you the right wing thinks that's a fair criticism, everyone else thinks that's lunacy. And I don't think that there is cheating in the voting system. But the point is, the discussion in 2021 and 22 was, let's have a system where you vote. There's a printer, and it prints out your vote. It's just like, it's that guy really? The guy voted? Yeah, okay. And then the paper just goes in a box, and it's stored and can be recounted. That was the whole discussion. Why don't we have that system? It's going to cost like $1 billion. You throw like $10 billion at like cars for judiciary, whatever. You don't care about money. That's suddenly, the spenders care about money.
Right.
Screw you. Right. So that was the discussion. Let's have that system. And so Congress didn't want to vote. The Supreme Court didn't want to vote. The media was painting that as like you're going to have receipts in your house, so then you can like sell your vote and people can be threatened. So no, that's not you're doing fake news. Stop. And every right winger that proposed that system or was critical of the current system was painted as you're trying to set up a way to delegitimize the elections and then say that they were stolen and propose a coup d'etat. So therefore, if you don't like the current system, you actually want a fascist dictatorship. That's your own plan. And therefore, we have to censor you to avoid that. That was the whole discussion. So a lot of people had their accounts taken down, had repression, were threatened, were intimidated. Because at that point, like that's in 2022, you were afraid of like, what can I say? Where's the line where I lose my account? Where is the line and what can happen to me? It was very uncertain, right? And eventually the vote on that law didn't happen. It was blocked. And that got a lot more people suspicious about the system because it's like, if your system is so safe, why can't I even pose questions on it? What's the problem? Like, that's very suspicious. That rattled off a lot of people. Adding to that, in 21 and in early 21, the Supreme Court had effectively annulled the whole car wash operation. They did it. It's a long discussion on why, but for short, they were saying that the judge who was presiding over the investigation, Sergio Moro, was partial. He was biased because after the investigation was done and Bolsonaro was elected, he resigned as a judge to become Minister of Justice for Bolsonaro. So therefore, he was biased during the whole investigation because his whole plan was to resign office and then go to another office where he would earn less. And that was the whole plan, which is ridiculous. It makes no sense. And it was also on the basis that he wasn't allowed to preside over those cases because there were politicians in it, and politicians in Brazil are judged by the Supreme Court. They have a special justice system. But the point he was judging other people. He was judging the people from companies, the people who were doing the money laundering, and the investigation started with that. So that's not wrong. And there were illegally obtained evidence, leaked conversations from hacking the cell phones from I think his cell phone or the cell phone of someone else. And they had like Telegram or WhatsApp conversations from them where he was talking to the promoters on the case. And they weren't like doing anything illegal. They were just talking. They were just talking about the case in general, which is normal, that there's nothing illegal about that. It's just kind of like there was maybe collusion here. And on the basis of that, the entire operation was annulled. All the corrupt politicians were set free. Everything was canceled. And people just were raging at that. The left wing was happy, of course, but everyone else was saying, well, look, you're just reverting the entire process of the corruption investigation way. And in 2021, they released Lula. Lula was in jail. He was convicted on a lot of different things. He was going to be convicted. He was convicted on charges of withholding property. When you have property, you don't declare it, and it's the I don't know the term in English. It's ocultação de patrimônio. It's the point is he received property from physical, real estate property as bribes, as corruption money, and didn't declare it. And the whole thing was, and he used other people to hide that property. That's a crime. So it's part of the crime of corruption. So he was convicted on that, and the conviction was confirmed in very many superior courts. He was arrested. He was in jail. And they annulled the whole thing and just set him free. And after that, the whole media of Brazil and the whole Supreme Court started to try and clean his reputation. He's not a corrupt, convicted politician. He's like your grandpa. He loves people and democracy, and he likes science and vaccines, and he's going to save Brazil, because they were trying to set him up to run in 2022. And during 2022, especially the election, which is the second half of the year, you could be censored for saying that he was a thief. if you say like he's thief, it's like, no, that's a lie. That's fake news. You could be censored. If you said that there were connections between him and criminal organizations, you could be censored. But that there were links. And after that, in 2023, there was an instance where the wife of a convicted criminal, a narco, this is the term in English? It's a criminal organization deals with drugs, a drug dealer,
organized crime, dealer. The mafia?
Yeah, like a mafia, a huge drug dealer organization. The boss was arrested. His wife was circling secretaries and ministries in the federal government with her tickets paid by the government and having meetings with them. And she's on an organized crime. She's a drug dealer's wife. She's like their representative. But during the election, you couldn't say that Lula had connections with organized crime. You couldn't say that he liked dictators. You had photos of him hugging pretty much every single dictator that ever existed, except King John Bong, because he couldn't get that photo. Probably he was sad about it. But he loved dictators. He supported every single one of them, pretty much. He loves Putin, and he loves your Iran. He loves every single dictator. It doesn't matter if they're right wing or left wing. It matters if they're dictators. But you couldn't say that. You couldn't criticize. You couldn't do anything. He ran an ad during his campaign. He ran an ad on Google. If you Googled his name and car wash for corruption or convicted, there was an ad saying that he was absolved. That's an objective lie. He was not. The case was nullified with fraudulent basis. He wasn't declared innocent. That's a lie. But the ad was there. He could do that. They spent like a week saying that Bolsonaro was a pedophile on basis of nothing. And that's allowed. But if you say that he's a thief, you could be censored. That's how the elections went. And Lula won by 0.9%. If you had fair elections with freedom of speech, he would have lost. So you don't need to get into the voting machines were corrupt, or you don't need to get into that. If we only had freedom of expression during the campaign to properly explain how he was a criminal and what happened, and tell his connections and what he was trying to do, he would have lost. That's the point. And during all of those years, in 21, 22, there were censorship orders, takedown orders coming from the Supreme Court, from Alexandre de Moraes, saying, this content is not democratic. Take that down. Take this account down. This person is doubting the voting system. Take that account down. But in basis of what? His decisions were published, right now by the U.S. Congress. It's like, can you quote the law that says that you can't take that down? Can you quote the law that says that questioning the system is a crime? No, it's not, because it's not illegal. He just decided on his head that it is and started taking down content. Almost 100 people, orders were there. I think it's over 100 people that they tried to take down. And it was a lot of government critics. And a lot of people that I don't like. A lot of people that just say, most of what you say is not very useful. But you have the right to say that. You have the right to question. You have the right to criticize. And what it did is create an aura of, what can I say? What can I do? I can't even say that Lula is a thief now. What the hell? And after he won in 2022, 2023 was his first year in office. They tried to regulate the media. They tried to censor the media. They tried social media. They tried to regulate and censor social media. They got in bad with criminal organizations. They got in bad with dictatorships. They did all the things that you couldn't say that he wanted to do, he did. And a lot of people who were saying the election say, but democracy is at stake. It's not. And that doesn't even get into January 8th, which was another very important event here in the chain. January 8th, 2023, there was, how they tried to invade the Capitol in the US, that happened in Brazil. After Lula won, there was a section of the right wing, it's not the majority, but there was a section in the right wing who said that the election was stolen and therefore they needed to have a military intervention, take down Lula and put back Bolsonaro, do the elections again, that type of stuff. I don't agree with that. I don't think they should do that. I don't think that's a good idea. But they were saying that, and I don't agree with that. But I defend their right to say that. A lot of people started getting censored, getting their accounts taken down, and that creates some insecurity where what can I say criticizing the system or what happened that could put me with that group? So maybe if I say that the Supreme Court censored the elections, which I just said, they censored the elections. The Supreme Court did. I couldn't criticize Lula properly. You couldn't say that he was thief or that he had connections with organized crime, etc. You couldn't. So, but I'm not saying that we should have a military intervention. But if I say that, could I be arrested? I don't know.
Hey folks, quick message from Virtual Storefronts. If you own a local business and you know you should probably be online, but you have no idea where to start and you're sure you can't afford it, then Virtual Storefronts is for you. They help local businesses get online faster and quicker than ever before, and they focus on getting local results in the search engines. You just set it and forget it. You set up keywords that match items you sell, and the Virtual Storefronts backend handles the rest. No maintenance or upkeep required. So you name it. Restaurants, boutiques, salons, farmers markets, food trucks, art galleries, gift shops, event services, lawyers, insurance agents, cleaning, landscaping, whatever you can dream up. Any locally owned, non-major franchise that is 12 or fewer locations business that maintains regular hours and serves the public in a local area is qualified to create, maintain, and communicate with the public with a storefront at virtualstorefronts.com. Absolutely fantastic. Check it out. Get all the details at virtualstorefronts.co. That's virtualstorefronts.co. Well, can I ask you, was there anything comparable to this under Bolsonaro?
He didn't do anything.
Okay.
So
this is not a matter of payback.
No,
or you get what you deserve or whatever. This side acts like this.
Yeah, he was totally free speech guy. There were people saying like all over the place saying that in 2018 people tried to kill him. He was stabbed. Right? He was in a political event, and they tried to stab him and kill him. He almost died. And there were people from the left all over the place saying that it was faked. It was a fake stabbing, or the stabbing was done badly and they should have done it correctly. Like there were hundreds of thousands of people tweeting that they wished him to die. And he was like, okay, I lament that, but just say that, whatever. You're stupid, but go on. He was a free, I didn't like him very much, but I have the same opinion. Like libertarians think about him the same way libertarians think about Trump. It's like, I would prefer him over Biden, but I would prefer a libertarian guy. He has problems. That's the same thing. The parallels are just amazing. But coming back, January 8th, a lot of people were camped in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil. And what they did, some people, not everyone, some people, they were having a protest there, and they invaded Congress, broke everything, just vandalized everything, invaded the Supreme Court, broke everything, invaded the palace, broke a lot of stuff, the presidential building. And some of them really were trying to somehow with that make a coup d'etat, which is just ridiculous. It's kind of like the invasion of the Capitol was a coup d'etat. It's like, how would this even, this is an impossible crime. It doesn't even make sense. But they did. And what was revealed later was that the government knew it was going to happen. They were notified dozens of times. They withdrew some security and they just allowed it to happen. And after that event, the government, the Supreme Court said, well, this was a coup attempt. And they arrested a lot of people. They jailed a lot of people for, I think, 17, 20 years for being there, breaking stuff. And it was vandalism. Vandalism is a crime. You unlawfully invaded property and you broke stuff. That's not trying to violently overthrow democracy. That's like breaking the statute. That's still a crime. But that's different, right? After that censorship ramped up, people were arrested, people were afraid, people got police raids. And later, a lot of stuff was revealed, like the government knew. Nothing was ever investigated. And after a few months, there was a leaked video from inside the palace where one of the ministries of Lula, the Ministry of Institutional Security, the guy in charge of security, but it's actually like a minister, like a secretary office. I don't know why, but it is. He was inside the presidential palace, opening doors and handing water to the invaders.
Well,
he was just fired. It was just like, oh, yeah, whoops, Maybe he just got confused, That was that.
This really is like a movie, honestly.
Yeah. Like I said, Brazil's favorite sport's not soccer or football. It's explaining Brazil to foreigners. Just your face is just like, and I'm going over, there are so many things that I can't go into because we don't have time. But an entire documentary was censored. It was bound to be published during the election. It was by Brasil Paralelo, which is an organization that produces conservative content, documentaries, movies, that type of stuff. They had a documentary, and that was a pro-right wing, that was anti-Lula. And the Supreme Court during the election said that that's censored. You can't publish that. Why? What's in it? I don't know. We haven't seen that. But you can't publish it. It's illegal. And they couldn't publish. And that was it. That was it. All right. But anyway, so January 8th happened, and people said it was a coup d'etat. It was an attempt to overthrow democracy. No, it was just dumb people doing vandalism. And I don't agree with them. But that was not a coup d'etat. But all it is, and now we have to safeguard democracy and regulate social media. And things just ramped up. And over those years, social media was, in effect, regulated and censored by decree, illegally, by the Supreme Court, by the person of Alexandre de Moraes. Bruno Ayub, who is known in Brazil as Monarch, it's his name on YouTube. He was a Minecraft YouTuber, and then he started doing politics, and then he created the hugest podcast in the history of Brazil. He's essentially Brazil's Joe Rogan, all right? He criticized Alexandre de Moraes, and he said he was already sanctioned for some other things, but he essentially said he asked questions. He didn't say anything. He was like, why can't we question the election? Why can't we say this? And Alexandre de Moraes is censoring persons. That's wrong. And he was censored because of that. And he was fined for 300,000 reais, which is roughly $60,000. And he had to flee Brazil. Essentially, I have a company that helps people leave Brazil as well. You can imagine that's an easy sell in Brazil. We helped him to get out. He's in the US right now because he was afraid he could be arrested, But he said, well, he's censoring people. He was censored. That was it. And like I said, it was close to 100 orders of censorship. They were secret. The social media couldn't publish the orders. They couldn't say that they existed. They had to lie. It was, it's just because you inflicted the terms of the thingy on the URL. Sometimes it would come out that it was on the court order, but accounts were censored. We couldn't criticize. We still can't. But now that it's international, things changed a little bit. But we didn't have freedom of expression in Brazil. We still don't. There is still a push by Congress, by Lula, by the Supreme Court to regulate social media and to censor it, and to create a government body that will say what's democratic and what threatens human rights or human freedoms or whatever. And it was just a government committee that can say what you can say and what you can't say on social media. And it had a clause inside the law where the social media platform could be held responsible by what you say. So if you say something in the platform that the government thinks is inciting a coup, YouTube could be held as responsible. So YouTube has to think in their heads, what could this judge possibly understand as something that could configure an attack on democracy or whatever? I have to pre-censor that, because if something gets attacked as that, I can be held responsible. That was a law.
Now, and can I just raise a contrary to fact scenario here? I mean, suppose all these things that happened under Bolsonaro, we'd be hearing about it all over the world. The U.S. would be condemning the regime.
Totally, yeah.
What's
literally Hitler reborn.
right?
Yeah.
Has there been any international response to what's been going on?
Now there is, because Elon Musk bought the fight.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about this part of it.
Because we tried to get it out. Like a lot of congressmen that I know personally, in fact, tried to get it out, but it's like, who cares? There's a whole bunch of stuff happening. Nobody cares. So Elon Musk bought the fight because he likes free speech. Things got really crazy, and it just goes up. And it's at some point you realize, like, this is going to get far worse. I need to step up. And what he said is, look, we've had many orders which are illegal to censor accounts for things that should be freedom of expression. Those orders are illegal. This investigation is illegal. You don't have the authority to do this. We will not comply. We will put the accounts that were censored, we will put the people who were silenced back on the platform because the orders are illegal. He's not saying, I will not comply with the law. He's saying, you are not the law. I will not obey an illegal order. And that riled everyone up because people thought, like, all right, now this got interesting. And Alexandre de Moraes replied by putting every internet provider in Brazil on notice that if he did that, Twitter had to be taken down. And what leaked was that there were threats that Twitter employees could be arrested. They were ordered to give statements for the federal police over the case, over I don't even know what. Elon Musk was thrown into the inquiry. And actually, he was thrown into the inquiry, named as CEO of Twitter. He's not the CEO of Twitter. He's the owner of Twitter, but not the CEO. But he's like formally included as the CEO of Twitter. It's like, dude, you didn't even like Google him before doing the whole what, So there were threats of arrest. There were all those threats, and he said, "Well, look, we're trying to get our personnel off of Brazil. As far as I know, they're out of Brazil, so they can't be arrested. A few of them have resigned. But as far as I know, I could be wrong, but as far as I know, there are no Twitter personnel in Brazil right now. And I would guess that was a deal. I would guess they talked to get this going. But a subcommittee in the U.S. Congress subpoenaed Twitter to see the orders because Twitter is it's a U.S. company, so they had to comply with U.S. law. So we want to see the orders of censorship because it's a committee on investigating the weaponization of the government against, which is what you were talking about in the opening. And so Elon Musk said, well, I'm an American citizen. This is an American company. I have to follow the law, and gave them the secret orders. They were ordered to keep secret and gave them to the Congress, and Congress published it. So now Alexandre de Moraes and the Supreme Court, they're in a pickle because how are you going to sanction a U.S. company for following the U.S. law? What do you do now? So that's where we are essentially.
Okay, well, I
just love your reaction.
See, I didn't know the background. I knew was that Lulu's crazy. I knew he was corrupt.
He's not crazy. He's evil.
Well, when I say crazy, I mean just doing wild things, but not without an ideology behind it. I mean, I knew he was terrible on COVID, and I mean, just downright possessed on the issue of the shots. Because I know he
doesn't care. No, Lula does not care about shots because we're now having an epidemic of another disease here in Brazil called dengue. It's just mosquito bite disease. They could have imported a vaccine that would have prevented this. They didn't. They could have fought this in many ways. They didn't. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about vaccines. And in fact, the left wing used to, like 10 years ago, criticize the electoral system. They were saying the same things that we were saying. No, it could be. They don't care. It's just like Bolsonaro is for free. He's not against vaccines. He was for the freedom of people to not vaccinate. Therefore, we should be in favor of vaccines. Do they care? No, they don't. It's just, let's take the opposing plank to get elected. That was it.
But I remember there was a time when he had a whole list, like he wanted to add the COVID vaccines to the required ones to go to school and stuff like that.
He did. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a problem now, in fact, because some children are not going to school, but that's another discussion.
Yeah.
But point is, he's not crazy. He's evil. Like, he's objectively, I think, evil. He just runs around to help dictators when that's politically harmful for him. He went on the Israel thing that he was essentially comparing both and saying, like, you're both wrong. It's like, no, one of the sides is Hamas. But wait, it's just, like, and even if you're not if you're a non-interventionist and you think like the US shouldn't be helping Ukraine, his position is essentially that Ukraine should surrender because it's also their fault that there's a war.
But I'm the same way that I don't really care what Argentina's foreign policy is. I'm more interested in what Milei is doing for domestic policy. What the reason I'm interested in this topic is that I'm watching, I'm observing the building of I don't want to say it's not a totalitarian society, but I'm watching the way the left, with its determination to carry through its program, just marches through and accomplishes so much, whereas all competitors, whether they're on the right, whether they're libertarians, feel, I mean, maybe this is starting to go away, but they feel like they're dealing with people of goodwill, and that if they just concede enough, maybe they can meet in the middle. And people like your leader now just don't think that way. They don't think like that.
Yeah, they use those people as useful idiots to get their way. Because what the left has done in Latin America, and that's what has been done in Venezuela very effectively, but it has been tried in pretty much every single other country in Latin America, is you get the judiciary. So it doesn't matter what the law is. You get the people who interpret the law. And then you start to redo everything, and you start to censor, and you start to say, and you just get a little bit thinking, so it's just a censorship for democracy. It's just against this. And you start to march. That's what they did. And that's what they're doing now in the US, probably.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. And the thing, what's astonishing is that in the US, it seems like there is a solid 40% core that is going to stick with whatever the Democrats do. That just doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how destructive it is. Obviously destructive. They're not ever going to have their minds changed. So
I don't think I separate two groups in Brazil, because Lula got 50% of the vote. Does that mean that 50% of the people support corruption and socialism? No. Like 20% do, but the others, they just think like, oh, he's for feeding the poor. He's for making Brazil great again in economics and being friends with countries in the world. Bolsonaro shouts and he curses, and Lula doesn't. He kind of looks like my grandpa. I'm just going to vote for him. So I don't think there's like 40% of people who would stick with Biden. I don't know like US politics that much. But I think about like half of those people would jump ship if they could somehow. But since the alternative is whoever the GOP puts up, they're like, oh, I'm stuck.
Right, yeah, I can't do that. Right, I can't, so I'll stick with what I've got.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the Biden vote today. I think that's a lot of the Hillary vote. I think Obama had a lot of votes that people like really wanted, like, he's a black guy who's one of us. He had a whole thing going. Hillary didn't have that. Biden didn't have that. It was totally like, let's just not Trump. That was the whole thing. And it's still going to be this year, pretty much. Like who actually wants to vote for Biden, by the way? But that's another podcast, I guess. But the point is that the committee in the U.S. Congress, as far as I understand, wants to study this case and helped us in Brazil to publish this case, because this is a warning to the U.S., and it totally is. They start with something like, oh, it's just like to protect democracy. Oh, it's just to incentivize people to vaccinate. Oh, it's just to, no, it's not. No, it's going to ratchet up to other things. And don't think that afterwards you can just turn this off, because we're now in a situation where do you go from this? Because the Supreme Court now has to ramp up. They can't just back down and say, oh, we're just joking. I was just, we're just testing you guys. No, they can't. There's going to be a backlash. There's going to be elections in 24 right now, in municipal elections. There's going to be elections in 2026 for the Senate, and they're going to try to impeach members of the Supreme Court, and probably Alexandre Moraes will be impeached in 2027. That's our goal. And problem is now you just riled up everything. That's what happens. And you just deepen social conflict. That's what happened in Brazil. We're more broken apart than we ever were. And guess what? It's going to get worse because this is going to deepen. Like, they can't back out of this. And right now in Brazil, we don't have freedom of speech. A lot of people are still afraid of speaking. A lot of people will tell me, like, dude, you just went and tell me what's in this and that. You could be raided. You could be... Here's what. I could have actually been raided last year. When they tried to pass the censorship legislation in Brazil, May 2023, they tried to pass social media regulation. And there were protests against it, and I helped organize protests in airports. The idea was we're going to get the congressmen flying into Brasilia, and we're going to have people in the airport there receiving them. And we're going to just have like signs like no to censorship. That's it. It was just a quiet protest. Like, I actually called a protest on an airport, 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. 25 people showed up. 25 people showed up. And we were just like holding signs here in São Paulo. It's like, no to censorship, no to law 2630. And we had that in like 10 or 12 airports in Brazil. In total, it was 100 people over a few airports just holding signs so the politicians would see that. And there were like, I guess, like 30 people in the airport in Brasilia receiving them with signs, no to censorship. It was accused that I think they never figured out that I was the only one organizing that. But it was accused that this protest was organized by Google and paid for by Google. I mean, if it did, they owe me money, right? But it was like a Google organized that we have to hunt those people. And the president of the lower house actually went on a rant about that. So they're interfering with democracy. They're doing this and that. I didn't talk with those social medias. I don't have context with them. But they were accusing them of organizing with me to do that. They didn't even know me. But then a commission was organized to punish people. It was just on some other bullshit subject, but to draw in and punish people who helped organize the protests against this legislation. And a great friend of mine was called. And we organized those things together. And he told me, dude, you might want to get ready because you might be raided. Like, that could happen. And he could have been as well. Like, he was more persecuted. I wasn't. I think they didn't get to me. But there was like a full month that was like, man, what could they find on my cell phone? Got to raise some stuff, I guess.
Good Lord.
Yeah, that happened. So, and I'm small, like in proportion to all those guys that were actually censored, like they're like an order of magnitude bigger than me. But, that happened. There's another creator in Brazil, Peter Duganiev. That's a moniker. That has another name from the capsule. He was actually included in one of those investigations for just like making fun of them. He had a parody account. The Supreme Court created like this Center for the Monitoring and Protection of Democracy or whatever the hell, I don't even. And the logo was an eye. And you could just like pull up the 1984 movie and get like the eye logo. It was like the same thing. And he just like made fun of that in an account. He had another Twitter account. He made fun of that. There was a Supreme Court order from Moraes to take that account down. And it was taken down for making fun of the logo. Because that's anti-democratic.
Hey everybody, quick word from Woods here. It's my goal to have the best supporters program out there, better than anything on Patreon or anywhere else. Support the Tom Woods Show, and not only do you get entry into my no censorship Tom Woods Show elite group, but you also get the 16-page Tom Woods elite letter mailed to your home every month. Who else is doing that? This is all new material, completely different from the emails I send, and it is red hot. My supporters also get invites to my murder mystery dinner parties that I've been holding around the country. I'll be adding more cities soon to woodsmystery.com. I hold these in penthouse suites at luxury hotels with a beautiful catered dinner. It's a ton of fun. I also invite my supporters to my annual Christmas party, and the higher up you go as a supporter, the more things you get. Some supporters even get a small gift in the mail from me every month in addition to the newsletter. So go check it out, supportinglisteners.com. You will not believe all the goodies at supportinglisteners.com. And my profound thanks to all of you. So, first of all, is there anything we non-Brazilians can do
Talk
that
about
would
it.
help you?
Talk about it.
Yeah.
Know the story, tell it to other people, know what's happening, talk about it in the US, because Brazil cares a lot about foreign opinion. So what has contained this last week? The fact that now Moraes and his bald head is international news. So anything he does is going to be criticized internationally. That's what stopped him. Because they're afraid of that. Like as long as nobody cares and nobody's seeing, nobody's watching, he can do whatever. What we're gonna do? Just leave the country? Yeah, that's what you can do at this point, or just bunkle down and wait, or try to politely try and chip away. That's what you can do. But now that it's international news, now that Elon Musk bought the fight, and he's essentially pretty much the most famous person in the world, I think at this point, probably. Now, this helped us. So if you want to help us, talk about it. Talk about it, and don't just talk about us. Talk about other countries where this is happening. Warn people so that doesn't happen in other places. But don't leave people alone. Don't leave people fighting alone for that. Just make sure, if we in Brazil, we know that a lot of people in other countries, they have our backs, they know our story, we feel emboldened to fight against it. But if we feel that we're alone, people are just going to get depressed. And I saw that happening in 2023. Lula was elected, it was major depression in the movement. People just gave up. So just don't leave us alone. Or if, to shout out a few places, what's happening in Georgia right now, that they're trying to pass censorship legislation there to advance the idea of Russia annexing Georgia. Don't leave them alone. Talk about that. What happened in Colombia, where there was the drug money inside Petro's campaign, and he's not president. Talk about that. Make that reach people. Just don't leave those people alone, and don't leave us alone. That's what you can do for us. I mean, if the US cares, the world cares, I guess.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is so. And I guess maybe I was naive, but I guess I thought probably 10 years ago that the kinds of things going on in Brazil were the kinds of things that you might see in a few holdouts, and we all in terms of truly totalitarian countries, but that obviously there's way more state action than we want in most countries of the world, but we're probably over this part of it. And now it's just almost becoming normalized that, of course, the state needs to regulate the free flow of information. It's for your own good. Usually it's for the regime's own good. And to see it happening is deeply demoralizing, but I guess I hope you do stick it out and that something does change.
Yeah, I think that Javier Milei's election was a light for us because it's one of us winning. I went to his ceremony, taking office. It was huge, and I think that emboldened not just libertarians, but everyone just hates the left and all over the world. And that's a very important struggle for us right now. This freedom of speech fight, because if we win this, I think it means a lot to the rest of the world that this is winnable. The state is not a leviathan that just crushes whatever it wants. We can fight back. I think that's important. But don't be mistaken. This is a method. This wasn't an accident. This was a collusion between a lot of evil people who want, maybe a few of them, they don't want dictatorships. Maybe a few of them don't want full Maduro in Venezuela or Cuban system. They want just more state, just protect people from themselves because sometimes they're silly and they should be protected from their own silliness. Like I love one of those phrases from you. This is what they actually think about you when you say like about homeschooling. When people are against homeschooling, they actually think that you could rape your child, maybe. So the state should take care of your child because you're a potential abuser. That's what they actually think about you. So
Yeah.
Those people, they get in bed with the people who want dictatorships because they just want more state. But they think it's going to stop. It's not.
Well, I can't imagine. I mean, there are things going on in the U.S. where I've actually started to think, well, in a pinch, where would I go? What would my options be? But then on the other hand, there's the part of me that thinks, why should I have to leave? Why don't the interlopers have to leave? Why should I be the one who has to pack up and leave the only place I've ever really known in my life? So yeah, I can imagine people saying, well, you better just get out of Brazil.
Yeah, you don't
Why should I?
Yeah. I'm not wrong. You're wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's also a debate on should we run or should we fight? And I think there's not a definitive answer. Like if you're in North Korea, you should run. If you're in Cuba, you should run. If you're in Venezuela, you should run. But what if the people in Argentina 3 years ago ran? We wouldn't have Malay. So there is a borderline case.
Yeah,
there is
true.
This is where you don't know. And I think Brazil is one of those cases where you should fight. And we're fighting. But we can't fight alone. Like we need you guys to know that we're fighting here. I decided to fight. I've been an activist for close to 10 years at this point. I fought in all three levels, like state, local, and federal. I've started organizations. I'm still doing this. I intend to run in this year's elections. I intend to run in 2026 if I can, if there is a Brazil there. I'm trying to organize those things. And if you're in a country where you think you should fight, you probably should fight. And if you think that, I'm too small, I was nobody 10 years ago. I just started a channel. And here I am. And maybe if you feel small right now, but if you start putting out ideas, if you start talking to people, Javier Milei was nobody 10 years ago. There he is.
Yeah.
So if you think that you should fight, you should. Because the people who are in charge of ruining your life and making the state bigger, they're doing full-time jobs and you're paying them. So you're not going to beat them in your spare time. And if you just think that they're going to go away, or if you just think that you can just run forever, guess what? We're going to end up like in Hong Kong. Like everyone ran to Hong Kong. Yeah, but eventually China just gets in. You're going to do what? Like we have to build people. We have to spread ideas. We have to build connections. I reached out to a lot of different organizations to help to tell the story because we need to reach out and build those connections because we can't be alone. Because if we're alone, if some country is alone, if some group's alone, the state's going to do that. They're going to censor it. They're going to go after you. And after they're done with us, they're going to help. They're going to go somewhere else. It's kind of like Iran going into other countries with terrorism, or how Cuba or Russia finances things in other countries. They're not just going to stop. Putin's not going to stop. Maduro's not going to stop. And Lula's not going to stop. So if you can help us to fight this, help us. And if you can help to spread the word, please spread it.
Do you have a link for us to follow you specifically?
Just Google anything Ideias Radicais, Radical Ideas. And yes, it comes from Hopa's book, like we need radical ideas. Yes, it comes from that. It's just Ideias Radicais or just my name.
Can you spell that?
Ideias Radicais. Spelling in English. Oh my God, I'm gonna fail this.
I don't know because I don't know what the English words are you're saying.
It's radical ideas.
Okay.
So Ideias Radicais, Ideas Radicais.
Oh, okay, all right. Oh, okay. But is this Portuguese?
Yeah, it's all in Portuguese. So,
I got it. It's okay. So I'll do the English alphabet. So it's, but why don't I just link to it? But I'll also say what it is. So it's IDEIAS and then RADICAIS. So that's what it is. Yeah. Okay. So I will link to that. Oh, and look at you. That's your Twitter handle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, just look at that on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok, whatever. It's that.
Okay. So I'm going to put that. So so you got a huge YouTube audience. That's great. And I've got you on what I'm still calling Twitter. I'll put these links in the description. And also, again, I'm just looking over here because this is where I have written down the episode number. Also, tomwoods.com/2482 is also where you'll be able to find those links. And by the way, I just this second followed you. I was not following you before for some reason, but you now have one more follower.
No hard feelings. No hard feelings. One very special follower.
Well, listen, I really appreciate this this briefing and update on what's happening. And I hope the tide turns for you. I hope the international attention is puts a little pressure on them, and we'll check in with you as events unfold.
All right, awesome, and thank you so much for this stage and for letting me tell the story.
Let's spread the word about this, get this out there far and wide. Thanks so much again, Raphael Lima. Appreciate your time, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening.
Become a smarter libertarian in just 30 minutes a day. Visit tomwoods.com to subscribe to the show for free, and we'll see you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.